So again, welcome everyone, and very glad that you could join us today. My name is Paula Newcomb, and I'm the Northeast Regional Coordinator of the Indiana State Library's Professional Development Office. I will be the host and question moderator for today's webinar, Teaching iPad and iPhone to Seniors, presented by Barbara Friedman, Director of the Erving Public Library in Erving, Massachusetts. So a few housekeeping items before we start. If you're having sound issues during the webinar, please see the sound issues box just below the chat box. If there's a global sound issue, we will announce it in the chat box. If you're unable to resolve the sound issue you're experiencing, we are recording the webinar and you can watch it offline after it has ended. If you have a question, just type it in the chat box on the upper left side of the screen. I'll be watching and we'll get your question to Barbara as soon as there's a good opportunity. And feel free to ask questions as we go along during the webinar. And there should also be a time near the end for questions. The session today is worth 1 TLEU, and your certificate will be available for download at the end of the webinar. If you're watching an archived recording of this presentation, information on how to obtain your LEU is in the video's description in YouTube. After the webinar has been transcribed, it will be available on the Indiana State Library's Archive Webinars page. For weekly updates on upcoming trainings and to learn more about what's happening in libraries across the state, please subscribe to the Indiana State Library's e-newsletter, The Wednesday Word, and check our continuing education website for other professional development opportunities. Okay, let's get started. I'm now happy to turn the presentation over to Barbara Friedman, and I'm going to help her get her screen shared. Just one moment.
And we're going through the same thing, and all I need to do is give you a full screen in just a second. Now is everyone seeing the full screen? Excellent. Okay. Thank you for letting me do this. This is a passion of mine. I am a senior myself, and I have been teaching this informal classes at the university in Fitchburg, and also at senior centers around. I don't do it very often, but I also help seniors when they come into the Erving Public Library. So presently I'm the Erving Public Library Director, but I'm originally from the Midwest. My Midwest jobs were University of Wisconsin and Wisconsin Department of Transportation and Marquette University. And then I moved out east, and I've been here most of my adult life. And have been director of several public libraries. I was fortunate to give many people their first email addresses, and that was such a hoot because it opened up such a world to everybody. So I'm sure that many of you do this on a day-to-day basis, but there's a real satisfaction in being able to spend some quality time with seniors and really lead them through until they get a certain level of competence. So I'm going to show you today go through my slides. I do not mind if you interrupt me. Go right ahead and share your experiences. During this hour, I'm going to give you an outline of my 5 90-minute classes. I'm going to give you 20 apps that every senior needs to know, and give you some practical advice. I learned the hard way. You really need to limit that class size, because if there's too many people at too many different levels, nobody's learning anything. So be tough about that. Our university is very tough about that. And remember, you're speaking to a different audience. So you're speaking to an audience that sometimes doesn't hear very well. An audience that has limited experience in using computers sometime. And yet you have some people that are very computer savvy, but this is a new technology for them. Proper pacing of these courses is really, really important. Every class is different. So, and you can offer these classes inside and outside the library, which is a great PR possibility for your library. Getting out of the library is a really good idea. And if you get paid for it, it's really even better. So, just to give you an idea of what the university pays for the senior program, it's about $50 a class. So if that looks like something that you could propose to either a senior center or a university college in your area, that might be another way of you spreading the word and making it worth your while. So why do I do this? I've been in this, as I said, I've been in this game for a long, long time, for 50 years. I really like logic. I love my iPhone. I made my kids buy me an iPhone over 10 years ago, and there are no Apple stores nearby. So even though I am an hour away from Boston, but we do not have Apple stores in central Massachusetts. So there, aside from the library and a friend, there's very little place for people to go to ask a question about how to use this. So just on Thursday, a patron came in with his iPhone and he says, "I'm ready to throw this thing away." And so I said, "Calm down, Jay, have a seat." Last time I had a week before that when he got the iPhone. Actually, it wasn't an iPhone, it was an Android. But when I sat down with him and taught him how to use his phone and do text, he thought it was a miracle. This time we went through how to get his email on his phone. And again, the light bulb went off and he went away happy. These little things make a big difference. So it's a great joy in teaching this. And so I love to do that. And again, questions, I will break for questions, share your experiences, especially if they're funny. Let's have some fun with this topic. It is a great topic to explore. I'm sure many of you rely on your iPhones or Androids, and it is such a great tool for librarians. So why do they need a smart device? So many people, and I do teach people how to use their flip phones, but they need to keep in touch with family and friends. And if they learn how to use text, and they love to take photos, and they can phone or use FaceTime and use email on their devices, they open up a whole wonderful world for themselves and connection to their families. So I think that this is such an important step. I can see very quickly those messages, and somebody said something about their 86-year-old dad. Seniors that use this technology in their 60s and 70s will be able to use it when mobility fails them in their 80s and 90s. So that is the technology that they will be able to order things online, deliver groceries, get help when they need it, and stimulate their minds, all in the palm of their hand. So I'm a regular Scrabble player, but I know just keeping in an active mind is really important. And the technology through consumer cellular is usually affordable for most seniors if they can afford the phone. What happens when you're teaching this is you really don't know where to start because they don't know where to start. So picture yourself on looking something up on a Google map. You know you want to get from one place to the other. In this case, this is from my home to Providence, Rhode Island. But what if I didn't know the first 20 steps to get there? Usually when a younger person shows an older person how to do this, they quickly do the last two steps because they know how to get there. But seniors don't know the first step. Often they don't know how to turn on the device effectively. They get lost in the passwords. One gentleman who was about maybe 85, 90 in one of my classes, he didn't realize that you could just flip up the phone and flip up from the bottom and change the brightness of the phone. He was using it on a very low light, and we flipped it up for him. It was bright, and ta-da! He could see these very, very simple things that we take for granted. Going through them slowly can really change how a person is using their device. So when I teach just iPhone or iPad because they are similar. And so why don't I teach any smart device? Well, I learned the hard way. I said for my first class at the university, I said, just bring a device. I'll teach you how to use a Kindle, an iPad, or da da da. They're all different. And so if you're really going to, if the seniors are going to get something out of it, it is the most effective way is to choose what device you're going to teach. So you might want to teach an Android class, you might want to teach an Apple class, or a Kindle class or a Google class, but limiting it really was the key to making me feel I was much more effective. So why would you want to teach? Certainly there's a patron need out there. If you're a reference person, it's very time consuming to answer questions at the reference desk. And as I said before, it promotes, we got a message, okay. It promotes the library as tech smart, a vital community resource, and brings in non-traditional users. And I am very interested in promoting the library in any way I possibly can, from Facebook to press releases to going out and talking to people. We really need to do that. We need to tell people what we do and how important it is. Class essentials if you want to teach. Now, if you're thinking you have an iPhone or an Android or whatever you're going to teach, and you can just take your device and teach people how to use it, that's one way of doing it. You would sit down and go through individually. But I found that a projector, a screen, and a computer, or a smart television and Apple TV work the best for teaching a group of people. I limited it to 10 people, and often I have less than that. And you have to have an open, reliable Wi-Fi connection. I didn't know this because it was years since I had been in a university setting, and I didn't quite understand how the technology worked for individual classrooms. But at the university that I teach at, they limited the internet access in different classrooms. So some of them you could download things, some of them you didn't even get internet access. So the first time I taught this, I had to tell people, well, go home and download it because nothing would download for us. And that's very ineffective. So if you are doing this in a senior setting or a different outside of the library setting where you don't know what the technology is, I see some questions. Somebody's saying you offer one-on-one technology, which is wonderful. But doing it in a group setting, you really need more technology than just the phone. So what else do you need? Well, you really need to know you kind of need to love your iPad and iPhone. You need flexibility and you need a whole lot of patience. So I began teaching this and I thought I knew some things. I still don't know everything. It's an amazing amount to know. So you might feel like, oh, geez, well, I still get stuck doing stuff, but teach it anyway. And I always learn something in doing it. So I encourage all of you, and I didn't realize that all of you are not just in Indiana, you're all over the place. So I'm so glad to be spreading the word around the country. One of my past jobs was working for Cyber Tools, which is an integrated library system, and I had a chance to go around the country and teach people how to use it and go to conferences and everything. So I did travel to many of your areas during that job, and it is very satisfying to be able to share information. I hope all of you get a chance to do something like I am getting the chance to do with you today. If you don't know the answer, I often get this, seniors are so helpful, right? So if I don't know the answer immediately, they'll say something like, no worries, if you don't know the answer, I'll just ask my 13-year-old grandson. Well, I go crazy when people say that. Because 13-year-old grandsons will, again, they'll teach you the last step, but they won't teach you the 6 steps to get there. And so I usually just bite my tongue and try to go on. And I know why they say this. They are proud of their grandkids. They watch them play video games for hours, and they must have learned something, but probably not exactly what the senior needs to know. And that's the difference between a 13-year-old and an experienced librarian. You know what the senior needs to know. So anyway, I'm working on these responses, biting my tongue, telling them they have smart grandchildren. But the most important thing here is the last thing. I do my homework, I bring the solution to the next class, and usually their 13-year-old grandson has not taught them how to do it. If you feel that they are not giving you, if you need to get their attention really quickly, here's a few tricks. Save what's on your screen. In an iPhone, just clicking the 2 buttons instantly saves it into your photos, which is a great. The best use that I have found are keeping airline tickets or movie tickets or anything you want to save in a coupon that you're going to Staples with. That can be very helpful for them, and it's such an easy thing to show them, and usually you get a, wow, that's really cool. Share a photo with someone in a class using AirDrop. So photos are the #1 reason people love their phones, and teaching seniors how to really use their phone effectively, share it with family, all those things are really, really great. And AirDrop is really quick. And show them how to switch from photo to video to panorama to slow-mo, etc. Amazingly, because it's a slide instead of a push, hardly anybody in any of my classes if they are new to using a phone, know that they can swish back and forth, slide back and forth, I should say. So here are if you are a younger librarian, you may not realize this, but these are real challenges for seniors. Their touch is different than a young person. Their speech is different than a young person. Swiping, clicking, and double clicking are mysteries to them. So don't underestimate their ability to learn, but understand that their physical body works different than your physical body. know that they do keep moving forward. My quote is opening up new doors and doing new things because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. They want to learn, as Disney has so eloquently put it there. But you have to overcome some of those physical issues. And this is 50 people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. They all want to learn.
I did have a question. Have you found a way to help seniors with fine motor skills, like people with Parkinson's and shaky hands?
Um, I, not, I mean, patience, certainly. I haven't used any adaptability things, but there are adaptability things, accessibility within the general settings of an iPhone. So you can make things bigger. And one of the things I tell every senior, if they can't seem to swipe, I tell them to spit their fingers, and that usually helps. So if anybody, maybe someone else in the group has some ideas to share at this point of anybody with disabilities. I did have a person with Alzheimer's, early Alzheimer's, that it was really challenging. But she sat through the class and perhaps learned something.
Yeah, I know my mom had Parkinson's, and she had it in her right hand, which was her writing hand. So when we would get her to get her right hand in motion to do something, she wouldn't shake as much. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but that's just one idea with Parkinson's.
Oh, yes, and of course, excellent idea. One of the reasons, the other thing is to use the voice control. So teaching them how to use Siri. There's a lot of resistance for seniors to use voice, because remember years ago when you saw somebody talking to themselves on the street, you thought they were crazy. Now people talk on the street all the time to themselves because they either have something in their ear, or they're talking to their phone, and it's very natural. But there is still kind of a stigma of older people talking to a device. So absolutely use Siri. And I also bring in during the classes, I also bring in my Echo Dot and teach them how to use their television sets, like Fire Stick and that kind of thing. So you can talk to all of those devices. I've stopped at this lose the stereotype thing, and we tried this, Paula, before to show this little thing about Grandpa, how do you like your birthday iPad? And it actually is in a foreign language. So if you just write down that phrase, or if you get this presentation online, you can click on that, and it's just a little funny thing about how some older people look at the iPad. So not very useful for what we think it's useful for. I see some questions. Okay, Paul is just telling you you're going to share that after we finish here. So don't bite off more than you can chew. Again, limit size, customize, minimize. You may have great expectation for doing all of these wonderful apps that you use every day, and you just don't get to them. So I limited the size to 12 or less. Usually I have 10 or less. Seniors do like to talk and share, but we learn from others, and I have had great success in allowing people to teach each other. So if there's a slower person in the class and there's a person that is a little above the class, pairing those people together really helps you to get the class all on the same page. So don't think of yourself in these kinds of situations so much as a teacher. Think of yourself more as a facilitator. Um, Internet speed, of course, is important. I talked to you about that before. And so before you teach the class, test whatever facility you're using. And make it fun. Seniors that take classes are out for the day. They like to laugh, find some jokes. Start with a simple outline and modify it often, but do use it. In the last class, I had a printing problem for the first class, and then we just kind of winged it for the next 4 classes. And at the end of the class, when I got the evaluation, one of the people in the class said, "Gee, I wish I would have had an outline of the class before we started." And it was only because I forgot to do that because they didn't print it out. Ask the class what they want to learn and find the pace that's right for your class. Remember again, it's not about you, it's about them. Teach them what they want to know.
Barbara,
And here are the
Barbara, how long are your classes? An hour or 2 hours?
90 minutes, and we go over, in case we have a snowstorm or something where we have to shove an extra class in there. Sometime we do go for 2 hours. I always give an extra 15 minutes, and I always get there early so that that person that's really having a difficult time can kind of get started early. So for me, it's a 2-hour time period. But the formal class is 90 minutes, and I find that's just about all most people can handle. 90 minutes of tech is overwhelming. So here are the apps they need to know. They need to know how to use their bank account, but I don't show them how to do that in the class. I tell them that this is a great thing to do. This is the place where we talk about security and passwords and things like that. So it brings up a lot of conversation. Should I do it? Shouldn't I do it? And then I tell them to go to their bank and have them set it up for them. But I check my bank account every single day. So I think it's really important. And it saves them the trip to deposit something, and they can check if their Social Security check came in. All kinds of wonderful things. So I really think it's important to tell them about it. Online shopping, of course, is wonderful. Stores that you frequent, Home Depot, Kohl's, you should have their app on. Pictures, again, most important thing. Airlines, seniors travel a great deal. Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's, you can get some discounts. Health app from their provider so that they can trace their cholesterol and all those other things. I think almost every doctor now has some kind of an app that you put on your phone. But they're all different. So it's again with the bank account, it's uncomfortable to do that kind of thing in the class because they don't want to share their personal information, but just encourage them to ask the person that provides them that app, and usually there's somebody there that can walk them through that. Most phones come with the walking exercise weight thing. That's great. Ask them what games they like to play. I play Scrabble. My sister plays Words with Friends every day. We enjoy our phones for those things. Make sure you give them, some people don't like those kinds of things, so give them an opportunity to kind of explore and discuss. That can be a really fun discussion. Transportation, now you can book your train. There's a commuter train from my house to Boston. I don't have to even think about keeping a schedule of the train or looking it up. It's right on my phone. I book the ticket right on my phone. I don't even have to show the phone to the conductor. Ta-da! This is to me a miracle, and it will be for every senior that you show this to. And parking, of course, if you live in a city, a lot of the parking is now charged to your credit card instantly. And as I mentioned before, Alexa, I show Alexa, Google, whatever device they want to know about and have at home. We can always go through those. So, essential for students to bring to the class. Oh, and this is the awful, and I see I have a typo here. I must have corrected that accidentally. iPad or iPhone, of course, they have to have it. Although I had one student who came in and she had a notebook and she said to me, I want to buy one of these things, I think, but this is a lot of money. So she attended the first class and she took very, very good notes, asked very, very good questions. And the next class, she had an iPhone. She had it connected. She figured out how to connect to the internet at home, and she was ready to roll. And by the end of the 5 classes, she was definitely an iPhone user. She had the service. She figured out how to work it, but she came with that notebook. Another guy, one of the first classes I taught about 3 years ago, the guy came with his iPad in the shrink wrap. So be prepared for people to come at any stage of their learning. And just a word to the wise, Apple ID and password. That is the downfall of every class. Nowadays, a lot of seniors get their first phone from a relative. So the Apple ID is assigned to that relative, and they just figure they're going to use it as a phone, so they would never need to download an app. Well, they need to download an app. So if you are advertising the class, or if someone else is advertising the class for you, make sure you put in the directions that they must have an Apple ID and they must have the password. Despite that always going in the directions, at least 3 people show up to the class that don't have their Apple ID and password. So, but that's the name of the game. A library card. The reason I teach this is to show people all the wonderful things you can get with your library card. And so encourage them to have one, encourage them to renew it if they need to. And for some of them, it gets them back to the library. Okay, is everybody hearing? There was a message about somebody not hearing.
I think we're okay. Thanks.
Okay, alrighty. And that is supposed to say curiosity, and our handouts necessary. I don't know what happened to that slide, but I apologize for that. I'll correct that before I resend it. Are handouts necessary? As I said, yes, they really are. People can refer back to their notes. Handouts can keep the class on track. But here's why I usually don't hand them out the very minute they walk in the class. Seniors who take notes never put their hands on their devices. So I do everything possible to hide those notes or the syllabus or whatever we're calling it until it's the right time to hand it out, usually at mid-class or end of the class. And the thing about notes is we all collect the notes, but we all lose them. So what good are they anyway? Really, the goal, my goal, is always to see them use their device and get comfortable with it. So that's my little. And then again, there's an app for that. You can take notes on your phone. If you encourage them to do that, I think That's a wonderful thing. I don't get too many seniors to actually take their notes on notes. So these are the symbols that all of you are probably familiar with. They just look logical. Of course a gear is settings. Of course a note is music. Of course that multicolored rainbow thing is where your pictures are. Of course the weather has a cloud and a sun on it. This is what it looks like to seniors. They don't know what those symbols mean. They have to learn them. And there are at least 50 symbols to learn. So if you can get a list of these just by looking this up on the internet. You can hand it out to them, but until they actually use it, they're not going to know these things. It's a one at a time kind of thing. Use the ones that you use most often. Make sure they all know those, and then venture off from there. Here's some of my class. I have this little arrow over here by these two students because this lady, the lady with the darker hair, that was the second time she took my class because she said she still wanted to learn something, but she was really good at a lot of the things. She brought her friend, and she tutored her friend during the class whenever she had difficulty because she was the head of the class. So again, pairing these people together, and you see the age of these people, you see the intensity that they are working on it. But here's Shirley, which is a librarian friend of mine, and retired quite a few years ago, but she joined my class, and we had a good time, so do keep them smiling. So we have, I believe, Paula, we have there was a question about Chromebook.
It looks like we've got Jennifer. She said she's teaching a Chromebook for beginners class next week, and she thinks an iPhone class would be great too.
Okay, great. Yes, a Chromebook class would be great. My sister is a Chromebook tech person at the high school. She has worked at 2 different high schools, and all she does is help the kids with their Chromebooks because everybody has one. They're very popular, and gee, if that's something in your area, I think that would be equally as good to teach. I'm going to go through this quickly. I think we have 10 minutes. These are my class outlines. What I found is, of course, any class you teach, you're going to introduce yourself and your students, but let them introduce themselves to each other, and then make each person answer, why are you taking this class? Because that's the best insight into how you're going to keep their attention. And you don't really care. They're not going to get a test. They don't care. They care to walk out of that class knowing what they wanted to learn when they walked in that class. And take a class photo immediately, project it on the screen, and give them their first introduction to iCloud, or if you're teaching in a different Google or whatever, Google Drive or whatever your medium you're teaching in. The cloud is a whole amazing concept that seniors do not understand. Getting started, at the beginning, there are some people in the class that are going to need to know where the start button is, where the home button is, how to get back, and how to find the settings. And so don't be surprised that what comes so naturally to you is something you need to spend 10 or 15 minutes with to make sure everybody knows how to do that. And taking a photo immediately gives them some sense of satisfaction. Many seniors, they have heard about selfies for years and years and years, but they don't know how to take a selfie. And again, at the bottom, the slidey thing that you don't press it, you slide it. And how to take a video. They can see that video. They don't get the idea of pressing the button that the dot is red. It's actually recording. Just working through those kinds of things slowly is so empowering. Flash. I mean, every senior remembers a Brownie camera and their first flash camera. But this little thing at the very top, they may not have even noticed that is a flash. Photos are the most important use of phones. Have the class take photos of you or each other. They need to know how to delete a photo. Have the class take a video of you or the class, delete the video, have the class take a selfie and delete the selfie. I can't emphasize that this is the most fun and the most do it very early, because it just gets the class going, talking, doing. And photo icons are a good start to talk about apps and icons. This is the handout that I use. You can, just do any kind of table you want to do and put anything you want in there. So I just throw this out just to get them thinking about what they want to learn. And at the bottom it says, have an active library card from any C.W. Mars library. C.W. Mars is our Central Western Massachusetts library system. A lot of seniors still have not gotten the idea that all libraries are connected into networks and that their library card works in so many places. So this is such a great opportunity to keep on bringing home the wonder of libraries today. Flip up. This is also like a miracle. If you're having problems, especially during the first class, if the internet isn't functioning exactly the way you want it to, you can do a lot just by flipping up from the bottom of an iPhone and doing showing them all of these things that do not require the internet. So they can do see how the alarm clock works, the flashlight works, the calculator works, all without the internet. And it also shows them how, when they're traveling, how to put their phones on airplane mode, how to the symbols for their cellular service, internet service, and Bluetooth. Just that little box with the green and blue there is a whole new education. And below it, how to lock their phones. Many seniors get really frustrated because the picture keeps on changing as they move their phones back and forth. All of those things are really good to spend some time going over, and it's just a flip up from your phone. So I just went through that. Connecting to the internet is important. Many seniors come to the class not having internet at home. So telling them how phones work is really important. They need to know that if how they're using data, and that if they go into Dunkin' Donuts or Panera or someplace like that, that they can get free internet and they can save their cell service. There's this whole discussion about how connections is really important, and oftentimes we have a discussion about how much do you pay? How much do you pay for your phone? Many people, many seniors now are doing consumer cellular, and that's a real good bargain, but they might have phone service with another family member. So going through all of that gives them an idea about sometimes saving money, but certainly gives them more of an insight into how their phones actually work. They need to know connecting to Wi-Fi, connecting to Bluetooth, all that. So you, at some point early on, probably the second lesson, connecting to Wi-Fi. And if you're giving them homework, keep it simple. Take a photo, take a selfie, take video. And here is a tip. Every person comes in to the class and their screen looks different than yours. So, starting with the first class, if you tell them that you want the first screen to look exactly like this and you give them a handout, and you teach them how to move the icons because they don't know that either, you can get everybody to have the same first screen. And then every class after that will be so much simpler because everybody can find their little FaceTime icon in the upper left-hand corner, and they don't have to go searching through all of the pages to find it. So this may not be the arrangement that you would choose, but choose some arrangement and ask them to put it on one page so you can everybody can easily find it. And we're only up to class 2, and I have 2 minutes. So I'm going to run through this quickly. Answer all the questions from number 1. Repeat anything you taught. Repeat, repeat, repeat is really my motto. They need to know how to download an app. They need to know the difference between an iPhone and an iPad. So if you have people with different devices, you need to go over that. And the 20 apps that I already showed you, that's what you want them to have on their first screen. The next 20 you teach depends on the class interests. And I'm hoping that you will get beyond the first 10, but if you don't, you've done a good job. Google Maps takes a long time to understand. Skype, Pandora, Google Maps, Kindle, your library's catalog, Libby, YouTube, Hoopla, Freegal are services that our libraries have and pay for. I always want them to know all of those things. By the time that they get some feel for their device, you're ready to actually go into the settings and the back end of things. If you do this in the first and second class, their eyes will glaze over and they will never come back to your class. Calendar can take 15, 20, a half hour just to go through it. But it is really, really helpful. Reminders are really, really helpful. Finding directions, calendar, and how to use YouTube. Those are things that as you get in, and if you still have the class attention, these are the kinds of things that you can teach them. And then we get to library services, my favorite thing. I will not go through all of those. You know what your library provides. But if you can get to that, somebody mentioned a teen volunteer. Can we just ask, can I just see what that?
Oh, yeah.
What,
And we also had a question right before that, but we'll start with the teen one. Amy said, we have paired the senior class with teen volunteers. The teens do a tremendous job of walking them through some of the things they would like to do. Highly recommended. Highly recommended. Picked up some great ideas. I did that
excellent. Right. You know, when I first, and this is 1990s, when we we had links. I mean, no graphic, no web. We started to teach people things, and I had a teen volunteer then, and he was really excellent in yeah, getting through some of the real basics. Sometimes teenagers tend to go too fast, but a good teenager, we are very fortunate to have teens working for us through the community action program, and that really is a help. Good suggestion, guys.
And one other question real quick. Wendy asked, do you offer multiple sessions for your class, like 2 days or 3 days?
The one I've taught the most is part of a senior continuing ed program, and it's a once a week 90 minutes for 5 sessions. So all of the classes are 5 sessions. Whether you take yoga or literature or whatever. My class, it just is 5 90-minute sessions. I don't usually. I usually bring some books. That's reassuring, and teaching them how to use YouTube is really great. And I've got a few things that won't show up here, so you can watch those if you have an opportunity to get these slides later. Senior classes can be taught, as I said, in the library and other venues. These are the ones around our area, so they're teaching them in Worcester. These institutes are specifically for seniors, and if you're not a senior, you may not be aware of them in your area, but this is a perfect opportunity for you to teach outside of the library. Most of them do pay their instructors, and Harvard, HILR, I think was one of the first, and all of these other universities have kind of copied them. So seniors are eager students. Enjoy teaching them. And here's my last slide. And I know I raced through those last ones, but here's my comic about things. Times have really changed. So for those of you still with us, you can read the comic. If anybody has questions, we have 5 minutes.
Okay, I want to thank you so much, Barbara, for sharing your expertise and your passion on teaching iPad and iPhone to seniors. Very, very helpful. I'm just going to say again for the people who are going to be watching this after on the archive recording, information on how to obtain your LEU will be in the video's description. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up the LEU slide in a second. But also, I will email everybody soon, hopefully within the next few days, to make sure you did get your LEU. If not, I will send another one out to you. And also get a copy of the PowerPoint and the recording link. So I will go ahead and switch it over to the TLEU real quick. And definitely go ahead and put in any more questions you have. Looks like we're getting lots of thanks and learned loads from you. I know that when I was working at the public library that I really got a lot of satisfaction out of helping the older patrons. They always were so willing, they were very willing to learn, they were very appreciative.
Yes, it's very satisfying.
Let's see,
you have one time trying to fix that, or do you not try to deal with that during class since it is time consuming? Yes, you really can't, if they don't have their Apple ID, it does take a lot of time. So yes, I learned that we have to do it after class, and that it's their responsibility to get that. So, we can't make up the Apple ID. So oftentimes, if they get really frustrated, I give them the nearest Apple store to actually visit. I think one or two people have actually had to do that. Paula, you're getting a couple of email me the certificate things, and what a good large group. Usually my webcasts have far fewer participants.
Yeah, we have a really good following here. I'll make sure I'll copy the chat, so if I do accidentally miss your having me send you your LEU, when I send out the follow-up, definitely remind me if I don't get you. Because I know sometimes people are not able to download the LE or the TLEU from our screen. Someone asks, okay, how do the local libraries really offer the directions with library cards?
How do I guess I'm not understanding the question exactly.
And they wrote, students across the street are also accessing the local library's usage. Maybe I'm not quite understanding it either.
Okay. Oh, those students perhaps are in the library registration. Okay.
I am not sure about that.
Yeah. Because even though I get people from a variety of towns, we all happen to be on a network system, so their cards work at all of those libraries.
And then someone else said, do you ever have students come in with a device that they have been locked out of? That's a good question.
Well, yes, in the case where they don't know the Apple, they can't get in into their Apple ID, but usually by the second class, if they're motivated, they've got it. They can learn a lot just by observing the others in class, and seniors share a great deal.